A note to listeners before we begin. Today's episode includes extreme sexual situations. Listener discretion is advised. Growing up, I was often bullied. What I was interested in was usually very different than the other kids, which made me an easy target. I watched some anime, studied hard, and of course everyone knew I was gay. The verbal attacks were definitely frustrating at times, but I learned how to deal with it. I think the worst period of bullying for me, like so many other kids, was in middle school. I remember there was one particular boy my 8th grade year. We'll call him Adam. Adam was a classic grade A brat desperate for attention, presumably because he had a hard life at home. Unfortunately for me, that attention usually came at my expense. I can't begin to guess how many erasers gave their life to be cut into tiny pieces and thrown at me, or how many times I had to throw away childish post-it notes that said, "kick me," or "I'm gay." I usually laughed at those, because, well, let's be real. Who actually puts post-it notes on someone's back these days? The attack started because my 7th grade year, Adam barged into my science class, made a scene in front of the substitute teacher, and was given a detention. When the substitute asked for his name, he gave a false one, and idiotic Skylar, always wanting to be honest, loudly told the substitute what Adam's real name was. I remember feeling so proud of myself because I had done the right thing. But for you young listeners, never, 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 never rat someone out like that. And especially not loudly in front of their friends. It never works in your favor, you get bullied, and you look like a damn fool. I should have let the scales of justice work things out on their own, but what can I say? Live and learn, right? Last I knew, Adam went into the army and is now a police officer, so I guess he's doing just fine. Lord knows why we'd let someone who knows how to weasel his way out of detention be involved in law enforcement, but I guess that's the least of the cops' problems these days. But I digress. That day, I was fed up with the bully getting his way, decided to take matters into my own hands, and eventually regretted it. So what happens when an entire town decides to do what I did? Welcome to Dead Time Stories. Skidmore, Missouri seems to have always been a sleepy little town. In 1981, Main Street had what you needed: a bank, a few gas stations and shops, and the D&G Tavern. The tavern was nothing more than a white metal bunker, really, and on July 10th, it seemed like everyone in town was there. It was nearing 90 degrees, and the air was still as the door to the tavern creaked open. A large man with bushy sideburns slowly stepped through the doorway with a smaller blonde woman following. The woman turned around as what seemed like the entire bar followed her and her husband out into the dusty, cracked road. The husband and wife opened the doors to their cream and brown Chevy Silverado and stepped inside as the patrons surrounded the vehicle and watched them.
Ken, what's these people doing?
Don't pay them no mind. They're just looking for trouble.
The blonde looked around as the people stood their ground, some of them wearing smiles that weren't exactly friendly. She wiped sweat from her forehead and cleared her throat.
Come on, Ken. Let's get out of here.
Instead of listening to his wife, the man drew a cigarette out of his breast pocket and casually lit it, ignoring the bizarre showdown happening around him. He blew the smoke out the window and took another long drag as the blonde grew more and more impatient. She turned and let out a little yelp.
Oh! Ken, that man has a gun!
Oh, shit! Missed the damn beast.
Ken Rex McElroy was born June 1st, 1934, to Tony and Mabel. The 15th of 16 children, I imagine Ken grew up longing for his parents' attention and probably often went to bed hungry. His parents were poor tenant farmers, and with 16 mouths to feed, you can guess how expensive life could get. Ken grew up with a love for animals. I'm sure he understood from an early age that in order to put meat on the table, you had to put a farm animal down. But that didn't mean he had to like it.
Ken! Get in here, boy, and help me.
Ken entered their beaten-down barn.
Yeah, Pop?
This calf's a runt. Been giving me trouble a while now. See if you can do something with it.
You mean kill it?
No, I mean pull out your tit and nurse it. Yeah, I mean kill it. For fuck's sake.
I don't feel right about that, Bob. Don't make me.
Tony punched Ken repeatedly as the young boy begged for him to quit.
If you want to eat this week, you'll fucking kill it. God damn it, boy.
I didn't mean, I swear to God.
Allegedly, it pained Ken when his father made him do harm to animals, but the abuse he suffered from Tony was worse. I'm sure this abuse didn't drive him to succeed, which is why he dropped out of school in the 8th grade without ever knowing how to read or write. Without much else to do, Ken started getting creative in his daily activities. Ken crept through a neighboring farm's tall grass one night, trying his best not to make any noise. He was now in his late teens, or maybe early 20s, and ready to make some side cash. He opened the creaky old gate to the pig pen and spotted the hog he wanted.
Come here, fatty.
He quickly hauled the pig into his truck and sped off to sell it at auction or to a third-party buyer who didn't care where it came from. By the time Ken was a young man, he was no stranger to stealing pigs, cows, antiques, gasoline, or any other items to bring in money. People in Skidmore were realizing that for someone who didn't have a job, Ken always seemed to have a decent chunk of change in his pockets. Rumor has it that on one occasion, he entered the D&G Tavern and covered a table with nothing but $100 bills. But Ken was growing up and wanted more than just animals. At the time, Skidmore had one school, and Ken was known to have a taste for teenage girls. We don't know much about his first wife, Sharon, but his second wife, Alice, was a young teenager when they were married. When Ken pulled up outside the school, he saw 12-year-old Trina McLeod leaving with a friend and rolled down his window.
Hey, doll. Need a ride?
Trina looked at her friend and giggled. There was something oddly charming about this 30-something-year-old man.
Sure, that'd be swell.
Ken and Trina started hanging out more often, and from what I can find, nobody in this small town said a damn thing about it. When Trina was 14, Ken drove her to a private area and killed the engine.
I want to do something real fun tonight.
Is we going to a party or something?
Nah, sweetie. Let me give those titties a little kiss, just like a mama cow with her babies. You'll like it.
Unsure whether this was right or not, Trina did what she was told as Ken unbuttoned her Daisy Dukes.
Don't that feel good?
I guess. But...
You're a virgin, ain't you?
Yeah?
Good. 'Cause once you've been fucked by me, you won't want anyone else inside you.
Kenny, I'm not sure we should...
Shh. Loosen up. You'll be the first of your friends to know what it feels like to have a fella inside you.
Trina unwillingly let the older man have his way with her and did not enjoy it at all. When Ken dropped her back off at home...
Hey, hon. Did you and your friends have a... My God, Trina. What's wrong?
Trina's father rushed over to his young daughter and wiped tears off her grimy face.
Papa, I think Ken raped me.
Obviously furious, the McLeods prepared to file charges. Ken caught wind of it and begged Trina's parents to let him marry her. Remember, you can't be forced to testify against a spouse.
But Mr. McLeod, me and Trina's madly in love.
There ain't no way in hell I'd ever let you marry my Trina.
Ken's eyes narrowed as Mr. McLeod slammed the front door in his face. Ken learned from an early age how to intimidate people to get his way. He looked down at the family dog and over to his truck. He marched over to the truck bed, lowered the door, and slid his rifle out.
Don't cross me again, man!
Thinking the McLeods would succumb to his requests, Ken drove off satisfied. But the death of a family pet wasn't enough. Next, Ken turned to more extreme measures. He snuck out in the middle of the night with all the gasoline he could get his fat hands on and poured it around the family's property. The family's home burned to the ground, and terrified of what Ken would do next, Mr. McLeod approached him on Main Street.
You may have Trina's hand in marriage, Ken.
Thought you'd say that.
With a grin, Ken rushed Trina off to Kansas where they were wed in 1974. To everybody's surprise, Trina was happy with Ken. It might have had something to do with the fact that she was pregnant with his child. Ken had fathered as many as 19 children between his 5 wives, and for the most part, everyone was happy. Yes, it's true, Ken would occasionally walk Trina into another room and the next day she'd have a black eye, but nobody went to bed hungry. Daddy definitely had enough money to feed them. Now, whether that money was obtained legally or not is a totally different story. And Trina wasn't alone when it came to taking care of the kids. The records are a little sketchy as to whether Ken officially divorced his previous wife Alice before marrying Trina, but regardless of whether he was still married to her or not, Alice was happy to stay on the property and help raise the kids. The two women were almost like sisters, but I suppose you'd be close to someone too if you had similar stories. Alice had been raped by Ken when she was 14, and like Trina, he quickly married her too.
What in the Sam hell is that?
Skidmore was absolutely terrified of Ken Rex. He had grown a reputation as the town bully because he was tall, 270 pounds, and had cold blue eyes they say stared right through you. Even officers from nearby towns were scared of him. The thing about Skidmore, you see, was they were so small, they didn't even have a police force of their own. So if Ken threatened you, it could take up to a few days before cops came to investigate. And by that time, Ken probably paid someone off to cover it up. Romaine Henry was going to learn this firsthand on July 27, 1976. He drove to the edge of his fields where Ken stood with a smoking rifle in his hands.
Ken Rex, you know you ain't welcome on my property.
This ain't your property.
Sure is. Now take that gun and ski-daddle before I call the cops.
Ken took a step towards Romaine's truck with his lips curled.
I knows you. You're the one been stalking my house every evening in your white Pontiac.
I ain't got a Pontiac. Now are you gonna leave or am
You
I gonna...
lying son of a bitch! I've seen you in it.
Ken, put that gun down.
You've been stalking my family!
Alright.
Be seated.
Romaine survived the shooting, though x-rays would show the rounds fired into his larger farmer's gut were still there a decade later. Shortly after the attack, Ken was taken to court and charged with assault with intent to kill. Ken smugly entered the courtroom with his lawyer Richard McFadden. The larger Richard nodded to the judge and adjusted the curls in his hair as he pulled papers from his briefcase.
Bring Mr. Romaine Henry forward, please.
Romaine took a seat.
Mr. Henry, tell us the story of this attack in your own words, please.
Yes, sir. I heard a gunshot on my property. Saw Ken Rex was hunting illegally. I told him to leave, and he shot me twice. Had the daylight scared out of me, 'cause ever since then, he sat outside my home firing his rifle into the air real threatening like.
I think that last part's beside the point, Mr. Henry, and we need to stick to the, facts of the case. Now, I see here in the paperwork that you said Mr. McElroy was hunting on your property on July 27th?
That's right.
Well, I brought 2 raccoon hunters today who said my client was with them the whole day.
But,
And I see here you had a criminal conviction 30 years ago.
sure, but...
So then tell me how any of us can trust a word you say, son.
because he's a criminal, too.
Now that hasn't been proven. Y'all like to take poor Ken to trial at least 3 times a year, but not once has there been evidence of my client committing a crime. You, on the other hand, were charged. So I'd like to remind the jury that we cannot trust Mr. Henry.
Ken was acquitted for shooting Romaine in broad daylight. And the town was frustrated. They were tired of Ken harassing them. Any time he'd been charged with a crime, he'd find out who was on the jury and then sit in their driveway with his shotgun ready. Even the judge wasn't spared. During Romaine's trial, his barn mysteriously burned down. Time and time again, Ken was acquitted for his crimes, which by 1980 had added up to 20. On April 25, 1980, Trina entered Bo Bowenkamp's B&B grocery. The 69-year-old Bo and his wife Lois had paid no attention to who entered. All they knew was it was a woman and her 8-year-old daughter.
Mama, can I have this?
The little girl held up a piece of candy.
Sure.
The girl popped the candy into her mouth and stuffed the wrapper into the pocket of her jeans. 40-year-old Evelyn Sumi was working at the store that day and noticed Tanya merrily skipping down the aisle.
Excuse me, little girl. You have to pay for that.
Pay for what? I didn't take nothing! Mommy!
Trina came running around the corner as her daughter screamed.
Is there a problem here?
She glared at Evelyn.
Yes, ma'am. Your daughter ate a piece of candy without paying for it.
I did not. Oh boy, are you gonna regret this. You're about to meet Ken McElroy.
She grabbed Tanya's hand and stomped out of the store as Bo came out from the stockroom.
What was all that yelling about?
One of those McElroy kids stole some candy. Shoot, I didn't recognize who they were.
Don't worry, I'll handle Ken.
Bowenkamp!
There's that bitch. She's the one who gonna blame Tanya for stealing the candy. Dumb cunt can't see anything. She don't know we ain't raising our kids to be trashy criminals.
Afternoon, Ken. Now let's take it easy now and have a quiet chat.
Bo, you know my daughter ain't a thief.
Now, I wasn't here, so I didn't see.
Then you can't say she did nothing.
By this point, Bo's wife Lois got involved. She timidly approached with her hands raised.
Now, Ken, I think this is all a big misunderstanding.
Oh, shit! Let's settle this then. Come on! I got $100. I'll pay you to fight my wife. That'll be a good show.
I'll do no such thing. Now take your wife and leave.
Ken crinkled his nose at the elderly woman.
Fine. But you best watch your back.
Bo's family was scared. Like others before him, the grocer began facing the brunt of Ken's attacks. His family noticed Ken's truck sitting outside their home on several nights and heard shots fired many times. Then one day, as Bo was sitting on his store's wooden loading dock waiting for an air conditioning repairman, he looked up as a pickup truck approached. His heart dropped into his stomach as Ken stepped out with a gun.
Now, Ken, the back of this store is private property. If you want something, either go in and buy it or leave.
Ken looked around and spotted 2 boys watching on in awe.
You two, here's a couple bucks. Why don't you go buy yourself some soda pops?
The kids took the hint, and cash, and bounced.
I don't want no trouble, Ken.
Sensing what was coming, Bo dove out of the way, but he was too late. The bullet hit him right in the neck. Ken smirked as the old man crumpled up on the ground, blood pumping out of the wound.
Oh my God!
David Dunbar, the town marshal, ran forward as Ken bolted for his truck. He lowered the truck's window as he started the engine and screamed out at David.
You ain't gonna say a fucking word about this if you know what's good for you. And if you do, I'll blow your balls right off!
Don't worry, Mr. Bowenkamp. We'll get you the help you need.
David called the people he needed to and ensured Bo was taken care of. He decided that day to retire out of fear for his life and took a much simpler job of wiring people's homes for cable television.
Breaker. We've got a
Meanwhile,
fire.
Highway Patrolman Richard Stratton was on duty when he heard the All Points Bulletin for the arrest of Ken. Having dealt with Ken's harassment himself, Richard knew the man would be listening to the police scanner and take to back roads to hide.
Not on my watch, pal.
Richard rushed to Fillmore and waited patiently.
There you are.
As soon as he saw Ken's familiar Chevy, Richard put on the siren and chased him down. They finally had Ken in their custody, but Skidmore wasn't convinced this would be the end. Ken Rex was no stranger to a courtroom after all. Ken Rex's lawyer, Richard McFadden, was the king of the courtroom. Using his wit, he postponed trials and moved them to different counties as often as he could, so that eventually people either gave up or the case went cold. Up until the attack on Bo, this strategy had worked. The difference now was there was a new prosecuting attorney in town. On April 16, 1981, a young man received the offer to become Nottoway County's new prosecutor. David Baird ran a hand through his thick brown hair and adjusted his bulky black spectacles.
I don't know if I should take this job, Pop. I mean, is it really what I want to do?
Well, son, you're fresh out of law school and working for legal aid with no plans for the future. You might as well take this job. Besides, nothing exciting ever happens in Nottoway County.
Famous last words. David packed his briefcase, accepted the position, and the very first thing he was handed was the case against Ken Rex McElroy. David stood in the courtroom opposite Richard McFadden.
Piece of cake. This guy's a real character, but we'll have it closed in no time.
You sure you know what you're up against, boy? I don't lose my cases.
So you've said, but the facts are clear that Mr. McElroy
was harassed by Bo Bowenkamp. Bo came at him, flashing a knife, and my client had to defend himself.
Oh, now really, Mr. McFadden. Ken Rex was scared of a frail 69-year-old man.
If I saw a knife in his hands, I would be too.
Thinking it over, David made a quick decision.
What if we lowered the charges from attempt to murder to knowingly caused serious physical injury?
If you think it'll help you, sure. Why not?
The town wasn't exactly thrilled about the lowered charges, but David knew this was the most likely way of getting Ken Rex thrown into jail. David's plan worked, and Ken was given a 2-year sentence. But to everyone's dismay, was released on a $40,000 bond pending appeal. Being well aware of town gossip, Richard pulled Ken aside.
I suggest you take the wife and kids out of town for a while until we can get this sorted out.
But Ken was stubborn and eager to get his revenge on Bo. One evening, Ken marched into the D&G Tavern with his shotgun and bayonet.
Bo Bowenkamp, where you at?
The patrons eyed each other, knowing this was a clear violation of his bond. They knew he'd go on trial and they'd have to testify against him. But of course, in typical Richard McFadden fashion, this trial was postponed. On July 10th, 1981, just a few blocks from the tavern, scores of Skidmore residents met inside the American Legion. Included in this group was Romaine Henry and Nottoway County Sheriff Danny Estes.
Now, folks, I understand y'all afraid of Ken Rex. I can't say that I don't blame you, but you gotta remember, he's a man, just like the rest of us.
We just want to protect those planning to testify against him at the next hearing. He's a real mean creature, Mr. Estes, and we want something more than a neighborhood watch program.
Yeah, let's get rid of him.
The main door swung open, and a man ran inside.
He's here! Ken Rex just walked into the D&G Tower.
All right, let's go. I grab my gun.
Now, folks, don't go and get any bright ideas. Leave that man alone and let the law take care of him. Meeting adjourned.
As Sheriff Estes drove out of town, the meeting attendees looked at each other and silently agreed to disobey his orders. They marched into the D&G Tavern, where owner Del Clement and his brother passed out free rounds. Trina nudged Ken.
Come on, Ken. Let's get the hell out.
Ken purchased a pack of cigarettes from Del and followed Trina into his truck. The crowd followed them outside and surrounded the Chevy Silverado like an old Western showdown. Trina nervously shifted in her seat, turned, and gasped.
Oh! Ken, that man has a gun!
A bullet shattered the truck's back windshield and then lodged into Ken's neck. He slumped forward, his dead foot pressing down relentlessly on the gas pedal. Someone flung open the door on the passenger side of the car and helped a petrified Trina out. She stared at her dead husband, ignoring the small trail of urine she was dragging along with her.
Get inside the bank, Trina, but don't you dare call the cops, or you'll be next.
Trina didn't say a word, but hid inside the bank. Ken's foot continued to press down on the gas until the engine finally had enough and blew. Silence fell over Main Street, and the residents, again in silent agreement, slowly dispersed. Somebody put a sheet over Ken, but nobody dared call an ambulance. It seems like every news source has a different amount of witnesses. Some people say only a few dozen watched the murder, while others counted as many as 60. No matter how many were on Main Street that day, one thing remains the same. All of them say,
"No, sir. I didn't see who shot him. I heard a gun and hit the ground."
When a coroner's jury was summoned, they declined an arrest warrant because nobody in town would say they saw anything. But clearly this wasn't a random act, as multiple bullets hit the car and 2 different types of shells were found, meaning there were at least 2 shooters. An upset Trina sat down with Richard McFadden.
I know who done it. I seen Dale Clement grab a gun from his truck and shoot Ken, but the whole town's gonna cover for him. Ken never did a thing wrong, but they decided to hate him.
That's right. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. We'll get the FBI involved and they'll handle it.
When the FBI came to town, Skidmore became even more tight-lipped. Some of the residents were interviewed 5 or 6 times, but they refused to change their story.
"No, sir. I didn't see nobody shoot."
And when they asked Trina about the time Ken raped her,
Yes, he was charged with it, but it was not true. I was jealous, but it's not true. He never had to do anything like that in the first place.
But is it true he burned down your family's home?
No, ma'am. It was faulty wiring.
And what about these other claims of Ken harassing people?
Well, now that's not true either. I looked into it, but we could never find any evidence that Ken Rex was bothering anybody.
And if we found out who murdered your husband, Trina, would you say justice was served?
No. No, because it was the whole town. They were all in on it.
On September 2nd, 1982, after grilling nearly every adult in town, the FBI closed their investigation and left, leaving Ken McElroy's murder unsolved. I'm not going to defend Ken McElroy because he obviously did many, many terrible things, like steal and rape teenagers. I believe Trina, being a young teenager in an abusive relationship, somehow convinced herself that Ken was this great guy. She claimed up until her death in 2012 that he treated her well, which unfortunately is something commonly seen in abusive relationships. With that said, I think it's important to look at things from another perspective. When I first read about this case, I thought it was amazing that an entire town was fed up with the bully constantly slipping through the cracks in the system and took matters into their own hands. Then I heard interviews with citizens with opinions on the other side and realized that it was kind of scary. I don't want to give Skidmore a bad name, but many reporters and writers have said that when they visited the town, they were iced out by the close-knit community and flat out told that they were not welcome. Some citizens wanted to speak up when being interviewed by the FBI, but feared that what happened to Ken could just as easily happen to them if it was decided they deserved to die. Just as Ken harassed people in town, the people in town harassed Trina and her children. When Trina filed an $11 million lawsuit against Nottoway County, Skidmore, the mayor, Sheriff Danny Estes, and Del Clement, she had to settle out of court for $17,600 because she was scared. One of her children said that while they were playing outside, somebody shot at the house and nearly hit them. The town's message was clear. Trina and her children were no longer welcome. Shortly after they moved out, someone burned down Ken's home. Today, the population has dwindled. The DNG Tavern, bank, gas stations, and school have all closed, and many eyewitnesses have passed away. Some have said it's the price the town has to pay for keeping silent. I have my overall opinion on whether the town did the right thing, but what do you think? Was vigilante justice the right thing to do? Shhh was written, narrated, and edited by me, Skylar Fastenau, and produced by Daniel Jones. Voice talent today was provided by Alan Anthony Morion, Ariel Dale, Jordan Catcher, Walker Barnes, Vince Perez, Matt McNelly, Jeanette Zosh, Daniel Jones, and Sophia Sassone. Our gorgeous new theme song was written and performed by Tracy Zales. Our sound engineer was Chelsea Bray. I have the best news of 2020 for you. The original Dead Time Stories is now live on Patreon, and we have some amazing gifts for those of you who subscribe to our Patreon page. I'm talking completely ad-free episodes, early access to new episodes, entry into the Dead Time Stories vault, and of course, everyone's favorite thing, merchandise. A complete breakdown is available on our Patreon, and the link to that is in the episode description. So go ahead and check it out today. And as always, thank you so much for supporting independent artists. We are truly nothing without you. While you're here listening, why don't you go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and review so we know just how much you love this episode. And you don't have to shy away from our social media pages either. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or our new YouTube channel at The Original Dead Time Stories. There you can meet the cast, learn more about today's story that we just didn't have time to cover, and let me know whether you think Skidmore was justified in what they did, which I am genuinely excited to know your opinions of. Go ahead and check it out after the show. As a reminder, The Original Dead Time Stories is now a weekly podcast, so we'll be back in just 7 short days with another story that will make you never trust the dentist again. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Until then, stay safe out there. I don't want you to become the next chapter's topic on The Original Dead Time Stories.